Hello, welcome to this week's episode of The Debrief. I'm State Representative Jennifer Pawlik. I represent District 17 and I'm the ranking member for House Education. I'm joined today by Representative Athena Salman, who represents District 26, and Representative Judy Schwiebert, who represents District 20. We'd like to start out today by sharing some positives that we've seen on our committee. So many times what you're hearing about are the bad bills, and I often wonder if you have any idea about the good things that are happening on our committee. So one thing that I wanted to share with you is the number of Democratic bills that we're hearing this year. In 2019, during my first year, we heard 74 bills on House Education, and only 6 of those bills were Democratic bills. In 2020, we had 78 education bills, and only 7 of those were Democratic bills. So far this year, we've had 61 bills in committee, and 14 of those have been Democratic-sponsored bills. So, Rep. Schwiebert, can you share a positive thought about the Education Committee?
Like you said, really appreciated that there have been more Democratic bills in our committee than perhaps in the past. One is a bill that I proposed to increase our state adult education program. We have 700,000 people in Arizona, adults of working age, who don't yet have a high school diploma, and about 3,000 people on the wait list. So this bill was heard in the Education Committee, passed out of it, and recently actually passed out of the House and is now headed to the Senate. So that has certainly been a positive that I've appreciated.
And how exciting that you've passed a bill in your first year. So congratulations on that. Rep. Salman, would you care to share a positive thing that you've noticed on the Education Committee?
Yeah, absolutely. So far, we haven't heard any bills that would impact public schools, specifically around the voucher expansion and the privatization efforts. But most of those bills started in the Senate. So I'm hoping that we'll see a continuation of it in these next couple of weeks as those Senate bills come over. But yeah, so far it's not as extreme as over in the Senate chamber.
That's an excellent point. You're absolutely right. And some of those bills will be making their way to the House. And as we continue to talk about those, one thing you'll notice is they're not necessarily even assigned to House Education. They've been assigned to other committees. So as we move into conversation about some of the bills, one thing that I want to point out is that over the last decade, educators have had to be involved in politics because of the attacks on public education. So back in 2018, there were so many educators who took time during their off-contract hours to work on the weekends, their breaks, and in the evenings to stop voucher expansion. I was wondering, Rep. Schwiebert, would you talk to us about Senate Bill 1452, which is a voucher expansion?
Absolutely. I was really distressed to see this bill come to us from the Senate, or even to hear it proposed to begin with. I'm just going to back up for a minute, because I never imagined that I would run for office, but it broke my heart that we had children in over 1,800 classrooms who had no permanent qualified teacher. And one man shared with me that his grandson went to first grade so excited and ready to learn and was doing very well. But when his teacher got sick and had to leave the classroom, they could never find another permanent teacher. And he watched as his grandson not only fell farther and farther behind, but also lost that shine, lost that excitement for school. And that happens because our state legislature has kept us at the bottom of funding. And when we expand vouchers, like in 1452, we are continuing to drill more holes in the bucket of public education funding and depriving the 90% of children who are in our neighborhood public schools from the resources and the teachers that they deserve. Every child deserves a quality education. And the only way that we're going to do that is by funding those local public schools. And the public, parents and others in our community know that too. That's why we passed Prop 305 to say no new vouchers a couple of years ago. And that's why this last year, we also passed 208 to further invest in our schools. This new bill from Senator Boyer would do much to wipe out those increased revenues for public schools. But the bottom line in education in Arizona is that we already have an abundance of school choice. If a parent isn't satisfied with the school in their neighborhood, they are not trapped there. We are an open enrollment state. They can choose any other public school, a district or a charter. But our state has a moral as well as constitutional obligation to ensure quality education for every child. And 1.67 million Arizona voters told us that, and we can't let 47 legislators who want to privatize education override them.
Thank you so much for that. And so that our viewers are aware, during the filming of this conversation, the bill has been first read and assigned to the Ways and Means Committee, but it has not yet been placed on an agenda. So that is something you can keep your eye on. Now, another bill that I've received a lot of concerns from educators is Senate Bill 1058. And this bill has to do with the materials we use when we're teaching our students. So, Rep. Schwiebert, have you heard from constituents on this issue as well?
I have. I've heard from a number of teachers who are really distressed about this bill, some of whom were teachers, left the teaching profession, have been thinking about going back, but this bill is a real red flag, as one person wrote to me. Basically, what 1058 would do would require teachers to post all plans and resources that they're going to use before they teach. And unfortunately, well, I guess I will back up and just say, I think the sponsor wants to make sure that where teachers and parents are in communication. And I think that's a really good intention. But unfortunately, this is not the way to do that. By requiring teachers to list all of the resources, that really will drive more teachers from the classroom than effectively help them communicate.
Well, and I was going to say, you know as well as I do that oftentimes something comes up in the moment, and it may not be in your lesson plans, but it's what we call a teachable moment. And suddenly where we had planned to go this way, we go this way a little bit. There are no ill intentions on that, but we're addressing the situation that's happening in the moment. So that would make it tricky.
Exactly. And I think teaching by its very nature, like you said, requires us to monitor and adjust.
Rep. Salman, Senate Bill 1783 has not yet been first read nor assigned to committee in the House. But I was wondering if you could shed some light on what does that bill do and why are proponents so opposed to it?
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head. In spite of all the challenges and barriers in 2020, teachers took to the streets again after the DC PAC Supreme Court threw off invested in 2018 to make sure come 2020, our schools get the funding that they so deserved and should have received from the legislature decades upon decades ago. And so what we're seeing is efforts by the conservative majority to undermine invested education. And most of the damage that we've seen going through the legislature has been done in other committees, like Senator Mesnar's Senate Bill 1783, which creates a new tax bracket for businesses and widens the latitude of what qualifies as a small business. 1783 violates the Voter Protection Act because it's trying to create carve-outs and trying to exempt income that invested in is ensuring revenue is generated from to fully fund education. And in addition to 1783, we're just hearing from the governor all the way to the House and Senate conservative leadership. We're hearing rumblings of huge tax giveaways coming this year through the general fund as a backdoor effort to make sure that the money that the voters approved in Prop 208 never actually reaches our school. So I'm really grateful to see that on Wednesday, March 10th, there is a motorcade. Actually, today, as the day of the filming, there's a motorcade event at the Capitol to support and protect invested in. But we're going to need all voices. We're going to need all hands on deck, because we know that when the conservatives do these tax giveaways to the wealthy and the powerful, it means permanent less investment in our schools, in our healthcare system, in our roads, in the vital services that Arizonans care about, and that includes public education.
One other issue that I wanted to call to our viewers' attention is that on Tuesday, March 9th, we went onto the floor and we were not expecting floor action. In fact, there were no calendars posted, no third reads. And we were very surprised because a motion was made to allow the House leadership to join in the Invest in Ed lawsuit. And you can imagine that those of us in our caucus are not on board with that decision. We're very disappointed, but we do want the viewers to be aware that that happened on March 9th. Before we end, I want everyone to be very clear that your voices are critical to the work that we're doing. We need to continue to hear from you. We welcome your emails, but if you have the opportunity to testify in committee, that would be golden. You're in the classroom. You have children in the classroom, and those experiences really illuminate the work that we're doing. If you wish to testify virtually, the new rule is not only do you have to sign up for the Request to Speak system, or RTS, but you also have to request a virtual link, and you must do that 24 hours or more in advance of the committee hearing. We meet Tuesdays at 2, so before Monday at 2, we need you to go to the email address houseed@azledge.gov to request a link if there's a bill that you would wish to speak on. And I would just plan your comments, plan to speak for 2 minutes, and then you'll have a concise message, and we can ask you questions. So we encourage you to be involved and keep us in the loop. We want to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining us this week on the debrief, and thank you so much for Representative Schwiebert and Salman for your great input into this conversation. Have a wonderful day, everyone.